Hello, I'm Mark Tucker,
Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg, and welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Welcome back, Alan.
Welcome back, Mark. It's been a busy, interesting couple of weeks, hasn't it been?
It has. December has officially started, and a lot of people are focusing towards the end of the year and holiday and time with families. And unfortunately, sometimes that also means time for businesses to make decisions that could affect
Yeah,
their employees.
yeah, it's rough. It's, end of fiscal year for a lot of them. It's certainly end of quarter coming up. And a lot of companies, that's when they make tough decisions, and even tougher for the employees that they get impacted by it.
Yeah.
And we saw a bunch of stories about this coming out of Amazon during November, and we thought it would kind of make sense to talk about that a little bit, about what it means for developers, what it's like for developers, if you haven't been laid off before, and just kind of, there's a lot of brouhaha about it and what it means for conversational development, and kind of makes sense that we take a little bit of a look at that, I think.
Yeah, so we'll try to treat it with the respect and sensitivity that it deserves. It's not just happening at Amazon in the voice world. That's big layoffs at Twitter and lots of other companies that are affected, big and small. But we'll focus kind of on the voice
Yeah,
side of things, and I'd also be interested in your perspective on kind of the Google direction away from conversational actions to app actions, because that affects developers not necessarily in an immediate laid off kind of way, but it's still kind of maybe part of the bigger story.
So we'll get to that in a second, I think. But
Okay.
so first, this is some of the earliest reporting on this was done by Brett Kinsella at voicebot.ai. So some of the information that he was able to get about exactly where some of the layoffs were, and they included things like Alexa Ambient is going to be shuttered. Alexa Health and Wellness is also going to be shuttered. The Alexa Games and Alexa Communications will be getting significant layoffs. And also a number of other product areas under the same group that Alexa is part of. I guess it's called the hardware group. Does it have a better name?
Yeah, don't know.
There are some other groups that are not Alexa related, or other teams that are not Alexa related, that are also seeing some significant layoffs. And then later he reported some additional specifics, that there are some layoffs going to the Alexa Auto Team, Alexa Skills Kit, Alexa Speech, Alexa Guard, Alexa Proactive Experiences, Alexa Routines, Alexa Video, and Alexa Marketing. And it sounds like many of these are engineering level layoffs. So not necessarily the most visible, but still impacting a bunch of people who are doing the real work behind the scenes.
So what that means is no new features, or kind of
slower pace on the features,
lower pace on the features, things like that.
Also, the device design group is going to be getting significant layoffs, and that's engineering again, although it's more hardware engineering in some cases. But it means like we're not going to see the rollout every year of a new voice controlled microwave or a new voice controlled whatever. Those are going to be trimmed back. Although apparently Astro is still pretty close to fully staffed. So for whatever reason, they think that an Alexa controlled robot dog is still has something to it. Also not affected is going to be the evangelism team for Alexa Skills. So the developer relations team, they're mostly uncut. Enterprise services are going to be mostly uncut. Alexa advertising, Alexa kids experiences, and Alexa platform also pretty much will be remaining fully staffed. And I think what we're going to see is we're talking about is those teams have a more direct revenue stream for Amazon than some of the other elements.
Yeah, I think I think that's kind of the big focus, or at least what I would term it is finding ways to monetize this from Amazon's perspective, and putting focus and energy on those areas and less on those that don't. There's kind of like a phase initially when Amazon first, Alexa first came out from Amazon, that it was, get as many devices out there, get the developers up and going, make sure that they can create skills,
see what works,
and that type of things. Yeah, see how it works, kind of figure some things out. But it was for a while there, especially I was following this quite a bit on voicebot.ai, as far as like, there are X number of devices, roughly, or this percent market share of Alexa devices versus Google devices and so I think for a while there, it was how many devices we could get into homes in as many different countries as possible. And I think that was kind of like the, push things out as fast as possible to get devices into the homes. And now they're at the phase like, okay, we've got the devices there. What can we do to make sure that we can monetize off of that?
And we saw over the past several years a similar kind of pattern on the Google side, where yes, there was this push to get the devices out, and then a push to as many countries as we could, so we could claim we were in more countries than Amazon was,
which they consistently were.
Right. There was this big drive to do it, and then kind of it slowed down there. And certainly internally, we saw fewer and fewer resources being dedicated to developer relations.
Yeah.
Which in some cases is a sign of how much resources are being dedicated to engineering. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see similar reallocation on the Alexa side, where they're not so much laying everybody off, but they are saying, we may have people in the wrong places. Let's try to make sure we get them in the right places. And if we can't find a good place for them, then we talk about where they go next, or they talk about where they go next.
It's also interesting because part of it could be, at least like on the developer side of things, like Alexa Skills Kit, I'm thinking specifically, is that as a developer, I always want more features. Give me more features, give me more capabilities, and maybe there's a thinking that the platform's matured to enough of a point where they can focus on some other things and not necessarily focus as much on new developer features. That's not what I want as a developer, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good business decision to keep trying to give me what I want as far as features. So maybe a certain amount of maturity too.
That may be true. I mean, and we do see that what wasn't mentioned was Alexa Conversations, for example, which they've been talking now for a little bit, saying that's where they see more and more development going into. But again, we don't really know what the internal structure of
because I was going to say, I could go through that list and kind of think like, oh, this feature probably goes over here, this probably goes over here, but I don't have any insight or transparency necessarily into that.
No, I mean, so we don't have any insight at all into what is really happening inside these companies. We can just see what everyone else can see.
I do have some relationship with some things going on with projects and stuff that we're doing, so I do have some insight on some of the Alexa, Amazon things, but nothing that I can really talk about. So I do need to be careful on some things and kind of how I say things. So, but this is all, from my perspective. This isn't anything from Rain's perspective or anything. This is me, kind of how I see it. Right. Just let everybody know.
And most of what we're talking about is really stuff that everybody can see. We're not talking about stuff that's insider knowledge.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that some of these layoffs, or the realignment of where to put people, was announced a couple of weeks before there was big reports about huge financial losses inside the hardware division.
Yeah,
and some of that, I think some of that stems from two logical consequences. One is that they were selling these at cost, or pretty close to cost. And that's because they faced tremendous pressure from Google, who was doing this, who was trying to break in and was doing the same thing. And the second is it wasn't clear what the revenue stream was from it was otherwise. I think Amazon expected it to be a convenient way to order stuff, and that never materialized.
I don't have any statistics on
Yeah.
how well it's materialized. Maybe it has. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. But the reporting is that never materialized.
Okay.
Certainly, there are people who are out there that are saying no. Well, their usage stats said use of an Alexa led to a ton of purchases, although not necessarily through Amazon. But I think it's also important to know from a developer point of view that there was a lot of friction involved in purchases. And on the Google side, there was a lot of friction as well. It was considered one of the worst user experiences on the user side. And when I saw how it was done, how the improved flow was done on the Alexa side, I was amazed that it was that bad. So it's clear there were problems.
Yeah, no, but something that's kind of along those lines too, because there's lots of different ways we've talked about it, different ways to monetize skills itself. In skill purchasing, there's even the ability to do like subscriptions or to pay a single price to enable a skill. But something that they just rolled out and talking about quite a bit is this affiliate links. So you can inside your skill order things from Amazon. Directly, not even just like take you to the store or have your phone go to the store with something in the cart. But it can do that, but it could also just order it for you. And so you could have a skill that's for a specific brand, and then some of their products that are available already on Amazon just to easily reorder, and then the skill gets a cut of the percentage of that transaction. So. There are definitely some interesting things that are still being investigated and experimented with on how to monetize from a skill perspective.
And I think that's wonderful. But it's also, why has that taken 7 years? Yeah,
it has taken quite a long time. It seems.
And I feel like that's what a lot of people are kind of saying is, the usage for everything besides the core functions never materialized. And I think as developers, we would say, well, some of the reason why it never materialized is because we didn't have the capability to deliver it. But
as a developer, like I say, there's always more features that I would like.
That's true. We're always wanting
easier and quicker. Yeah, we're kind of finicky that way, But no, I agree to at least to the extent that things haven't exploded in the monetization side of things like we thought. There are definitely core functionality features. Like there was a recent tweet from Nick Schwab who does sleep sounds from his company Sleepjar, and he's seeing more interaction than ever on using the Alexa device for sleep sounds. So that's people are continuing to buy devices. There are more devices than this year than there were last year, and more people are doing sleep sounds.
I feel like what that kind of shows us is that the device is popular. People are buying the device, they're using the device. The core concept is there, but we still have only scratched the surface on finding the things that are monetizable.
Yeah.
And Nick was incredibly fortunate that he found a niche that both wasn't fulfilled by anybody and could be fulfilled using the device.
Yeah. He did definitely have early advantage on that. And there's some of the early skills, even though weather is handled by Amazon, Big Sky. I know the developer who's done the Big Sky skill, and he's gotten tons of usage on that. There are definitely use cases, built-in 1P experiences like music, timers, alarms, things like that are. So there could be more ways to monetize those. There could be theming of alarms and things like that developers could get in on that ecosystem as well. There are other ways to monetize, but we haven't necessarily seen those be explored yet.
No, I think that's really it, is that there's a lot of avenues that audio first devices will be able to handle and can handle, and maybe almost can handle right now.
Yeah.
That really we haven't just explored, that nobody's tried yet to see if they'd even work and if people would be interested in them. And then we get to the question of, well, how do we make sure people find out about them?
Yeah.
But that's for, two voice marketers. That's not our department.
but also we don't want to leave out smart displays. So multiple devices. Some of the stuff that I've been doing the last month is being in on the beta of how to do widgets.
Oh yeah.
And right now the widgets in the widget gallery, there's right around 30 widgets. So it's like right at the very beginning, and we're just kind of learning how to do that. But that is a way to have something on your screen that's updatable. It's like a notification. It's like a tease. It's like an easy access into your skill. And that's still being explored. So I've got some of them out there. I look at my statistics so far in the last month. I've got 3 skills that have been out there for like a whole month, and a couple that have only been out there for less than a week. But there have been over 16,000 installs of widgets, of just those widgets. So not bad for a month.
No.
As people are discovering what's available and kind of exploring different things, and as we kind of push the envelope and figure out what widgets can do, I think that's one way that shows that there's interest. People are using them and trying them out, and just kind of see where things go with that.
Right, and I think the question again is going to start becoming, okay, what's good, what about them will make it better than alternatives? And I think that's something as designers and developers we need to be cognizant of, is what can we do that is better than someone pulling out their phone and punching buttons on the screen?
Yeah.
Where is that voice? Where is that ambient interface going to be more useful than pulling out the phone, which is ubiquitous? It's always there. How do we, go from ubiquitous to ambient? And what are the things that we can do there? We'll find them.
Yeah, we will. I guess maybe this is a good time to talk about the news reports that have been out there, like Amazon is in demise and it's going away. And I've seen some of these from some of the same authors that I've seen before that have, I don't know, it seems like trashing on something is more interesting, or seems to get more interest in an article than praising something. Not to say that there's not some sort of undertone of, there's stuff going on and let's talk about those, and that's what we're trying to do here, but not really the clickbait title that Alexa is dead or something like that.
No, I agree. These are really clickbait titles, but underneath these clickbait titles is a teeny tiny grain of truth to them. I mean, the story underneath it is that Amazon is losing money on Alexa right now. Okay, Amazon was losing money on selling books for years. Let's remember that.
Yeah, it's $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar company. It can lose money for a while. Shareholders may not necessarily be happy about it, but there's a long play.
But also let's remember the reason why they were losing money in some cases was because they were selling the devices at cost. And one of the great things about the fact that they were selling it at cost was that you were able to get, a $15 dot, or under $100 for a device with a screen. And you're going to compare that to these kinds of devices, which are now selling for $600 to $1,000.
Yeah.
And having low cost devices everywhere, that's a benefit to a lot of people. Low cost and still relatively powerful devices, because you were taking advantage of cloud computing. You were taking advantage of distributing things.
Yep.
There's a lot of power to that.
There is definitely a power for, well, like if I'm in a room and I want something, I have a question or something, I just ask. I don't think, oh, am I in this room and does this room have a device that can hear me? Right. It's just like, I have a question. Oh, Amazon, what's the capital of blah blah blah, or what's the height of Mount such and such, or whatever it is, right? Whatever question I've got going on in my head, I don't necessarily even have to think about going to a different room to ask the question.
Right. So, I think the fact that these devices are ubiquitous and ambient certainly laid the groundwork for a really powerful platform.
Yeah.
That if Amazon was selling these at the same prices that, Apple, for example, is selling theirs, wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's part of the difference too, is that, Apple really hasn't done very many devices, and they're able to charge premium, and they know that their fan base will pay it, and so they likely have not been losing money on it.
Right, but as developers, nobody's paying attention to those Apple's devices.
Can't really do anything on it. Yeah.
Well, you can't do anything on it, but also nobody has them.
Yeah.
They're a very, very distant player in the market right now.
Yeah, I agree.
So as developers, there's not much point in us, thinking about Apple, simply because there's no platform, there's no market for it. In the same way there was, it ends up there's no market for Bixby. There's just not enough people that have a Samsung device that runs Bixby to develop for it. And that's,
or even if I have a Samsung device, I don't do much with Bixby on it.
Yeah.
So I've got other apps and I've got 2 other voice assistants that I would go to before I asked Bixby. Right.
Well, and I think so. The notion that Alexa wasn't just this one product; it was a platform. It was a suite of things. Yeah. I think was what made it appealing, but also the only reason that made it appealing was they were selling the products at cost and losing money on it. So that's a complicated set of economics there about how you deal with that. I don't know. Hopefully at this point they've gotten enough in place where we're going to start seeing development, the new ideas coming in the development for the platform.
Yeah, and I think you approach this differently if you're like, let's kind of imagine the things that this could do and get it out to as many homes as possible, is a different mindset than let's figure out how we can make value that will make Amazon money, or make it indispensable for users. I think that's kind of, I think we're in a different phase, and I guess I think that's what JP from Vixen Lab was kind of trying to talk about in his video that he did recently, is that the news stories are hyped, but things are changing. The focus is changing. There is a restructuring. We're kind of entering a new phase.
Well, and I think also we're seeing that somewhat with if, for example, Alexa Skills Kit and Alexa Routines are supposedly losing staff, and yet we're now also seeing third-party companies like VoiceFlow and Jovo and some others that are building the tools so that, maybe Alexa doesn't need to focus as much on that end of it because outsiders are.
Yeah, maybe that's true. They don't need to have their own Alexa SDK, open source project. There are other open source projects, or maybe it's functional enough and the open source community can kind of take it from here.
Yeah. And you still need some team, because you still need to, manage the console, and you need to provide those hooks for the third party. But now, you're having the third party doing a lot more of the work and coming to you saying, here are the features that we need. And they're now starting to prioritize what comes next, rather than you having to forecast that.
Yeah.
And I think, again, we see that on the Google side as well, is, now that it's over in the Android camp, you're seeing Android developers who are very familiar with product cycle releases and new features and so forth, and requesting those new features increasingly will be able to demand them and thus better set the agenda.
Yeah, I see that.
But it's either way, it's hard on the teams that are there.
Yeah, it's definitely hard on those that were directly impacted by layoffs, but there is also kind of a psychological, for those of us who have focused so much attention over these years on this industry and have invested, hundreds of developers, thousands, almost probably tens of thousands of developer hours into this over many years to kind of see, okay, well, what's happening? How is this going to impact me? How is this going to impact, the project that I'm working on right now, or the thing I'm dreaming about, doing next year, or whatever it is. So there is going to be some change, and there is definitely some impact, and not necessarily an unwarranted level of concern, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's also could be a motivation to find better, clever, different ways of doing things, and push this forward even more.
No, that's true. It'll be interesting to see that if people who were on the team leave Amazon, what did they go off and do? We've seen in the past, people who have left Google or Apple have left those companies and gone on to do some incredible products. Not all of them are well known, but there are some amazing products that are out there from ex-Googlers and ex-Apple and ex-Microsoft people who had a vision that they just couldn't do inside the company. And once they were untethered, did some amazing stuff.
Yeah. So it's definitely hard. I'm not trying
No,
to.
Yeah.
It's kind of it is really with heavy heart that we talk about this topic. I try to find something to be optimistic about, and there is, and I think generally I'm still excited about this community and this industry, and see lots of good things going ahead, in the future. But I really am sad for all those that were impacted. This is just really hard to happen. Hard to happen at this time of year. Hard to happen in any time of the year.
Yeah.
But just really hard.
Now, have you ever been through this kind of stuff before personally?
I have. So almost 30 years of doing software development. I've probably been laid off probably at least 4 times. I had one company that kind of went in a different direction, and the business got sold, and so there were layoffs. One retooled from .NET to Java, and so they let go all the .NET developers. There's been situations where I've been laid off, and sometimes as long as 6 months, which would be really scary.
That does get scary, yeah.
Yeah, and so I definitely feel for what's happening. I've been through it myself, and it's just really rough. And sending out love and support to all those that are being impacted and their families is just it's heartbreaking.
It is. No, it definitely is. And these are people who have been building stuff that we have all been enjoying for years.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily know their faces, but we relied on their stuff, and so it's hard to hear when they're impacted like this.
Yeah. So just best wishes to all those that are impacted as you regroup and look for what next is on the horizon for you. May you get lots of love and support from family and friends, and love and support from us here at Two Voice Devs.
Yeah. So we'd love to hear your takes on this. If there's anybody who's inside that can speak about your experience, we'd love to have you on and talk about it as a developer, because developing some of these tools, developing some of these features is very different than what people who are using the tools and features can be. So we'd love to hear from you, your thoughts, your perspectives. And we hope you all have safe landings. And you can reach out to us. We encourage everyone to give us feedback on LinkedIn, the comments below. And we'll talk about it another time on Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, Alan.
Take care, Mark.